Hi, it's Jane with the Compassion Project. I am here today with Carrie Mitchell, and I'm super excited. She knows that. Say hi, Carrie.
Hey guys, woohoo!
Carrie is incredibly creative, talented, and absolutely beautiful inside and out. She's from Kelowna, Canada, and she is a mom of two grown children, Chloe and Mitchell. And she's also a friend of mine from way back, over 30 years ago. I got to know Carrie. She was the best friend of my younger sister, Kim. And so we kind of knew each other in those early years, in our teenage years. And we recently reconnected. Like we hadn't talked in,
Yeah,
25 years. And we reconnected a few years ago. So Carrie's an incredibly talented artist. For most of her life, she was an abstract mixed media artist, creating big, wonderful, she says messes, I say paintings, on canvas and panel. But what's really interesting, and this is why I want to do this interview, is that after years of loss and grief and burnout, because Carrie's gone through a lot in her life, she was led to Mandalas, which is a meditative, brain neutral art form. I just learned this and I just think it's fascinating. As they ask equal energy from both the logical and creative parts of your brain. And having your brain balance is what allows for peace. And I just think it's unbelievable. And I'm honored you're here. And everyone, all of us right now, need more peace in our lives. And I know a lot of people are struggling through this time. So welcome.
thank you, Jane. What a lovely introduction. I am so honored to be doing this with you.
Yeah, so I really want to start. I want to go back to when you were younger, because I mean, there's a lot that I don't know either, because we knew each other 30 years ago, and again, like I say, we hadn't talked for a long time. But when did you get your passion for art? Like, how were you really young, or when did you start to realize that you're talented and it's kind of part of who you are?
It's funny. It probably sounds like super cliche because a lot of artists say this, but as far back as I can remember, I wanted to make things. I just was always making things. I didn't really think of myself as an artist, and I wasn't necessarily making what you call art, but I was just always making things. I was always like figuring how things work, and I would even when I was really, really young, I would like take just regular pieces of paper and I would draw little things on them and write letters to my family in Nova Scotia and stuff like that. So I was just always making things.
So
Um,
always creative. The creative side is in you, hey?
I think I was just kind of born with it, really. And
Wow. Yeah, and
and
my family's also art,
very
come from a
creative.
very creative family. But so yeah, so I find your story interesting. So one of my very favorite quotes is what you don't know that you don't know. I love that. And it's like what you don't know that you don't know about that person. And
Yeah,
I just so you understand this, I always saw you as this incredibly um vivacious, happy, the teenage Carrie that and the and then over the years seeing your art, and I was always like, oh, Carrie is just amazing. But what I didn't know when I was lost in my life and things I was doing
yeah.
is that you were struggling and that you were struggling with depression and anxiety and I'm just curious is like when did that happen? Was it do you remember a time when it kind of started?
Also, probably like my answer is probably really similar to being a creative person. Is as like something that I've learned recently, and there's new science around, is there's 20% of the population is considered highly sensitive, and it's actually animals as well. 20% of living creatures are highly sensitive. And I did not know until recently that I was an HSP. I'm part of the 20%. And a lot of HSPs, highly sensitive people, are also very creative and also struggle terribly with like ups and downs and kind of the roller coaster of life. And we can be really sensitive and as a result have anxiety and depression. So that's something that's been with me most of my life. as well as the creativity. And it makes you like, it makes you really protect yourself, you know? And so I think what happened to me and what happens to a lot of people is you build almost like an exterior persona that's like, and you don't know you're doing it when you're little, you don't know that you're doing it.
Right.
And my early life was quite tumultuous. Like there was a lot of chaos and stuff in my family life. And so as a result, I think I built this little kind of like wall, this little bubble for myself, you know,
Yeah.
where I could be in there. And so my inner world became super lit up, but my outer world, I was just super introverted and shy. And so it's interesting for me to hear you say that you saw me as kind of like a bubbly, vivacious teenager, because, oh man, talk about teenage angst. I was so angsty.
Well, I was only, I think, probably 19, 20, and you would have been 16, right?
Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
was going, I can't even get into what I was going through. Teenage years are not easy for anyone. But I think the interesting is that and you and I both have done a lot of personal growth, but I think it's so interesting when you start to really understand the mind, and that a lot of us are broken from our childhood and teenage years. And it's not necessarily parents, or you can't blame anyone. You could have a really good upbringing with parents that have done a lot of personal growth, but you could go to school and have teachers or peers that say things, and your brain literally forms these pathways that you think you're less than, or you think you're a certain way from when you're young, and it's not true. Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And like you say, it happens before you are conscious about being able to let it in or not let it in. It's just all coming at you, right? When you're a kid, you don't know to
Yeah.
protect yourself from certain things, or from like bullying and things like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when did you really, like, when did the depression, anxiety really become a big issue with you? Was it later, after you had your children, or?
No, it actually started quite young. I can't even think what age I would have been, but it's still in my teens. Yes, I really struggled with it, and um, really, I just felt life was just really confusing for me. Like I just felt like, what's the point, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
And and I think anxiety and depression tend to be like two sides of the same coin. um, Anxiety will kind of push you into depression, and it's like it's cyclical or
Yeah.
circular.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think a lot of people right now during the pandemic are dealing with like the anxiety leading to depression, because when you have anxiety and then you add uncertainty, it creates depression. Like it does, it creates that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but have you always used your art, like when you were doing the mixed media art and the bigger, she's so talented. You're watching, this girl is so talented. um, did you use your art back then as just a release, like to help you with get through anxiety and stuff?
Yeah, I think so. And you know, like where we lived out kind of in the boonies, where we were out at the end of Lakeshore there, I was able to be in nature a lot too. And I can remember just like walking up the hill, and I used to braid, like I used to pick all the pine needles and braid little baskets and things like that. And so yeah, the creativity was just, it was just always my go-to. And I think it was kind of like the my response, like the world is coming at me 500 miles an hour, and I would pull into my little cocoon and I would just make things, draw,
Wow.
weave, braid.
And a lot of people are turning to creativity during the pandemic. I met a lot of people that have learned painting, have taken up creativity almost as a healing. It's happening.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually, in a lot of ways, I'm grateful for the pandemic, and feel like this is a year where a lot of people can come into their truth. And yeah, it's, the change is painful and difficult and all of that, but change always is, right? And I love that people are tuning into, and oh, isn't it amazing we have the internet? Because you can go in and just like learn anything.
Yeah. Yeah, you can.
And you're not in a classroom where you feel intimidated by what the other people are doing and stuff. You can just
Yeah.
do your own thing.
It's true. So
Yeah.
I just want to talk a bit about, I know the last 5 years have been really hard on you. You've gone through a lot the last 5 years. Has that probably been you've had some loss,
Yeah.
grief, and I know it literally made you ill.
Yeah. Yeah, it did. Yeah. Well, what happened was I got like I had a really cool studio downtown. Just a little studio that I shared with another artist, and I loved that place. And I was there for 10 years. And then I love teaching as well, but I had to always carry all my tables and my art supplies and everything wherever I was teaching. So I dreamed about having a studio where I could teach art and where it was like this funky hub where people could come and just be super creative. So I built it in the same place where my studio was. I expanded into the whole top floor of that building. And it was amazing. Like for the first kind of 6 months, it was literally this dream come true. I
That
felt
was the Heart School, that one?
yeah, Heart School, yeah.
Aw.
And I felt like I was just in heaven, and people were just loving everybody who came up there. Just said, "This is the coolest place. I just want to, hang out here." And it was amazing. But what happened was I got so out of alignment with myself because all of a sudden I had to be an administrator. And I was swamped with like paperwork, planning, um, having to like figure out how to bring in enough money to cover all the expenses. And like is typically the story in the arts is you don't make enough money to hire other people. Like I couldn't hire an administrator. So it sort of started to suck the life out of me. And I did it for 4 years. And by the end of the 4 years, I was like, I crawled out of there on my knees.
Aw.
I was a mess. I was so, and what's interesting is I had developed some autoimmune conditions. I have Hashimoto's, which, side note, if anybody here has thyroid condition, which is quite common, um, it can cause terrible depression and anxiety. And I didn't know
Oh.
I didn't know that until I really started digging in the last 4 years into
Oh, wow.
my own health issues that, um, and yeah. So anyway, we can talk about that after, but it triggered a lot of symptoms from my autoimmune conditions that I was kind of like burning out and so out of alignment with myself. And so I got super sick. And it got to the point where I didn't even have a choice anymore. I had to close the studio and get out of there.
Really? I didn't realize that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And so my partner and I, that winter, like I think I closed the studio in September 2017. And my partner and I went to Mexico for the winter, which was really awesome, really amazing. Um,
And
and
you actually been to Mexico a lot in the winter just because of depression, right? To get to where the sun is. Is that right? Is it
yeah,
healing?
yes, totally. It has been a big part of my healing is being in Mexico for the winters. So
Yeah.
we've done that for 3 years. But life happens, and we're not going to be able to go this year. So we're regrouping, and like so many people in COVID times.
I know. Honestly, that's hard for a lot of people that have homes there that have gone every year because that is how they stay happy and it's like their happy place, right? And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
know.
I know it's so amazing to be able to just wear flip flops every day and jump on your bike and go to the shop, and it's amazing. So I'm going to be
Yeah.
experiencing winter for the first time in 4 years. I don't know.
Oh, wow.
It's going to
Take
be.
lots of vitamin D. Take lots of vitamin D.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So when did you, whatever you're going to lead to the Mandela? How did you discover the Mandela painting? Um, and I know you went through the loss. I mean, there's a lot you went through. When
Yeah.
did that come into play, the Mandela art form?
The Mandalas actually started. I did one of those little 100-day challenges on Instagram. I thought I got to challenge myself. I'm crazy. This is me. Like when things start to really, really get difficult, my knee-jerk reaction is to get super busy and pile more stuff on myself. I'm learning this about myself. So anyway, that was like probably in the final 6 months of having my studio, I started doing the 100-day challenge on Instagram, and I decided I was just going to do mandalas because they were so fun and easy, where I would just start, and it was like completely freehand and doodly, and I would just doodle these little mandalas and post them on Instagram every day. And so that was kind of the beginning of where I discovered, and it got to the point where I loved it so much I couldn't not do it. And I love when that happens, you know, when it's not forced, it's just kind
Yeah.
of, oh, this is awesome. I'm going to show it. And it was my meditation and my peace in a really like kind of chaotic time.
So doing the mandalas, can you explain that whole brain, what it does for your brain to create calm or peace? Like,
Yeah, totally. Yeah, well, what's interesting is my mandalas have kind of evolved. Like, so they started out just as those little doodles for the 100-day challenge, and then I got really interested in sacred geometry, and as a kid, because I was so sensitive, I think I had such a hard time. Like, I actually had learning disabilities, and math was my nemesis. I couldn't do anything mathematical, and I would just seize up, you know? So how funny is it that now I'm interested in geometry? Like, it's just kind of like crazy to me, but um, sacred geometry is a super interesting science. It's a spiritual science to get to do research. You know, it's interesting to look at.
hmm,
So my mandalas have become much more geometric. Like, here's one um, that is it's they start
that's beautiful.
yeah, and so they start out with a grid, which is super mathematical, where you use, like, you know, rulers and protractors and compasses, and you make lines and circles, and it's very accurate. So that would be the left brain part of it. And
Okay.
yes, and what's so cool about that is every grid is the same. You can't do it wrong. So it initiates you into this relationship with the paper and the art materials. And then from there, you're right. It's quite organic the way it happens. You're doing this left brain activity, which is meditative and focused. And then your right brain creative starts to kick in, and you can feel it happening. It's really fun. I encourage people to try this, because I think in our culture, we tend to underutilize our creativity. You know, we have to stop at a red light, and everything is based in logic, the way we live and do our daily life. You walk down the grocery store aisles, and, you know, and especially nowadays, there's arrows on the floor. You've got to go in the right direction. And so,
Do you ever get confused? Sometimes I'm such a rule follower. I don't know if it's Canadian, but I'll be going to the grocery store and there's a little sign and like, oops, I'm down the wrong aisle. Now I'll look up, I go back and I follow the arrows.
totally, I know, it's too much pressure.
Like I'm going to get in trouble or something.
Yeah, exactly. And sometimes people do give you dirty looks. So yeah, so we live in a very left brain world.
Okay.
Yeah, and so our creative part of our brain tends to kind of almost atrophy. So it takes a little bit, and this is why I find, as an art teacher, I find a lot of people say to me, "Oh, I can't draw a stick man, and I'm not creative." Well, the truth is, you are creative. It's just that you've been using only one part of the muscle, the brain muscle. So we have to exercise it and build it back up again. And
So interesting.
everybody has access to that. That is without limitations. One of my favorite sayings, and I don't know if I made this up or somebody else said it, is, "We are created by creation to be creative."
Oh,
We're all creative.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah. So
Created by creation to be creative.
yeah.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah, that's cool. So yeah, that's why mandalas are equally left brain, right brain activity. So the right brain part kicks in when you know, then you just start drawing, basically, and you can't go wrong because you're playing with on this grid that's already been there for you, and you're just making pretty shapes and then
So
painting.
that creates a calm in your brain and peace. So if someone is going through depression or anxiety or that, if they started doing that even on a small scale, it would get their brain into alignment. Is that the idea? And it creates a calming effect?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It does a few things. It balances the left and the right brain hemispheres. It's meditative, of course, so that you're kind of getting that moment of peace out of all the chaos of your day. And there's something really powerful about showing yourself you can do it. There's something really magic. Like, I've taught so many art classes, and there's a magic moment, and you can feel it happening in the room when people start being proud of themselves, and they make a little work, and they go, "Oh, I did that," or they mix a color and they put it on, and they're like, "Oh, I did that. It's beautiful," and you're so proud of yourself. And we
You know
don't get
what?
that.
I think about my grandson right now. I have a beautiful little grandson, Maurice. He's 6, and he loves art. I mean, I think it's in him to be creative, maybe because my mom and my sisters, and we have that. He's so proud of his art, like showing it off, and you can see that feeling. And you think about most children are.
Yeah.
So there's a point where we must lose that creativity because we get lost in life and busy and.
Yeah.
But those,
Yeah, absolutely. I think Picasso said that every child is an artist. And it's so true. I follow Danielle Crissa, and she has a podcast called The Jealous Curator. And you might like this for your grandkids. She just wrote a book, and I can't remember the title, but you can see it on Instagram if you follow The Jealous Curator. And she wrote a book that's about the art bully. And it's so adorable. And she has little kids on her Instagram feed reading the book. It's
wow.
Yeah,
wow.
It's so awesome. I just love it. It's really
cool. So okay, so the Mandala, how many years ago did you start doing that?
That's probably about 5 or 6 years.
And then when did a lot of your loss and grief happen? Was that you'd already started doing that, so that did you have that to help you get through?
Yeah, it's funny, like the universe is funny how it puts things in our path, because I got the inspiration to do mandalas probably about 6 months before I had to close my studio. And I was starting to get really sick and really downtrodden. And I was spending probably like 4 days out of every week in bed with migraines and stuff. So the mandalas were just fantastic for that. I could even lie in bed and draw even when I was really sick. And so I think the place where I really started learning about like experiencing grief was letting go of my studio. First of all, that was a huge kind of almost identity crisis. Like, who am I without this place,
Yeah.
So that was the beginning. And then we went to Mexico, and I got home, and that May, my very best friend suicided. She died of suicide.
Your very best friend?
My very best friend. So I had lost the studio, but I had this lovely winter in Mexico, and then I came home, and my friend died. And I took that really well. Actually, it was funny, not funny, but horrible. Was we adopted the most adorable little Chihuahua when we were in Mexico that winter, and 2 weeks before we were supposed to come home and bring her home with us, she got distemper, and we had to put her down.
Do you know what, Carrie? Okay, I remember that. I was devastated because I knew you were going through a lot of depression and dark time, and I remember being like, get a puppy.
Yeah.
And then I saw on Instagram you had this adorable puppy, and my heart was so happy, and then the puppy passed away. Was that the beginning of things happening that you had to struggle with? And then your friend,
my friend died, and that was probably about a month and a half later after we lost our puppy. And then a month after that, my beautiful son-in-law fell off a cliff and died. And then, it just kept coming. It just kept coming. And in the midst of all of that, I was so determined to figure out what was wrong with my body. And so I'm just shaking just even telling you this.
That's a lot. That's so much for one person to deal with. It's like trauma after trauma after trauma. And then
Yeah, I know. And it just kept coming, and it just kept coming. And I kept thinking, I mean, we hadn't really had those kinds of things happen in my family yet. I think it probably happens to every family where those tough times kind of come. But we'd lost grandparents, but they were old and they had been sick, and we had, an awesome time to say goodbye to them and all of that. So that, there's grief there for sure.
Mhm.
But this was a different kind of grief. This was raw, crack you wide open kind of grief. It was brutal. And my physical self was so weak and so broken that to have my emotional, spiritual self breaking at the same time, well, this might sound totally crazy, but it's been the most beautiful thing that I've ever experienced.
Oh, having to be broke open and having to, it's
Yeah.
because I think it's like we live this kind of the surface life. You know what I mean? Like we're busy, 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 busy. And it's like, how are you today? I'm good. I'm good. How's it been? Great, great. And then you come home and you fall apart or whatever, or things. But we're in that habit forming program, like you say, the left brain, the way we live.
Yeah.
But then something cracks you open like that, and the pain, you have to somehow dig deep, right?
You really do. You really do. Man, it introduces you to yourself. That kind of grief, you know who you are all of a sudden. And I think that's why I say it was such a beautiful experience, because I had created these layers around myself and I had protected myself for 50 years,
Yeah, your whole life. That inner child part is the
Yeah.
real yous can come out, right? Is that what it is?
The real you comes out when you experience those kinds of things. And I mean, as an artist, to have art through that whole process has been such an amazing healing
I'm
power.
honestly I feel like so sorry you had to go through all that, because I remember that's just when you and I had reconnected, just before
Yeah,
your son-in-law was killed. It was an accident, right? Just before that, we connected. And
yeah,
then it's like you just couldn't handle, it was your puppy, your best friend, and then it was almost like that tipping point of like, what else?
yeah.
I think a lot of people also, like, we all go through grief in our life. Like you say, we have grandparents, which you all celebrate getting to the old age and you don't want them to pass away, but they've had an amazing life. It's when the unexpected
Yeah,
younger people grief sudden, there's no warning at all. That is just shocking. And then we're like, your brain doesn't know how to go on without them almost, right?
yeah. It's a fascinating experience because your instinctive system, or whatever you want to call it, like your coping system, shock, and those kinds of things, you get to experience how the body knows to protect itself, from the extremity of all of that stuff. And so it hits you all at once, but at the same time there's all this protective mechanism in us instinctively that doesn't let you get it all in one go, if that makes sense.
Yeah. The
And
coping mechanisms, comes into play. Yeah. I don't,
yeah,
like,
and then
I've experienced grief, but not that in a short period of time, that amount.
yeah, yeah, it was pretty shocking. It was pretty shocking, yeah.
So, and then how did you come out of it? Like, what if someone was watching and they're going through a lot and they've lost a lot and had grief? Because I do know people that have had way too much, and it's like, what else? Like, I've had friends just be like, what else? Universe, I can't handle anymore. I'm not strong enough. And then something else happens.
Yeah,
What would you say would be do you have any tips? Like, I know the Mandala art, I know, and I totally love that, balancing the brain, but is there anything else that you find like has really helped you?
yeah. One of the things that I've done, is I have changed my diet very drastically, um, because I'm an HSP. I didn't realize this, but now I know that sugar and certain food, like especially sugar, grains, and seed oils and things like that, I've had to really, really clean up. My diet
Yeah.
made such a difference to me being like, when all that tragedy sort of hit me, I was just newly letting go of a lot of things in my diet. I gave up well, I had been smoking too, and I gave up smoking. I gave up alcohol. I gave up sugar. I gave up all grains.
Wow.
I gave up all of the like sort of toxic seed oils, those kinds of things.
Yeah.
I cleaned my diet really, really like scrupulously. And I don't know that I would have been able to get through all this had I not done that. I
Do you know
really
what's interesting is I did an interview, one of the chats here in the Compassion Project with Cindy Shaw. She's from Kelowna. Do you know her?
no.
You should watch the interview, and she's a Amen brain health coach. Have you heard of that?
Cool.
And the reason I'm bringing her up, and she's incredible, she's the most incredible website. She's all about healing the brain and working with people with depression, anxiety, all that. And she talks about the brain as almost like like a computer, where you have to fix the hardware first, like with diet and the right vitamins, to make sure your brain is actually healthy before you can work on the mind. Like
Yeah.
she has this, so that's exactly what you're saying, because you had to get your food and your brain healthy right before you could heal.
Yeah, because what we don't realize, because our typical diet is extremely inflammatory, and we don't realize that because we start eating that way as children. We
Yeah.
don't know how much we're actually suffering because we don't have anything to compare it to. But when you give, especially refined sugar and gluten, when you give
Yeah.
those things up, um, just miracles just start to happen in your life because your inflammation starts to go away. Like your brain actually has half a chance. I didn't realize
Right.
that a lot of my depression and my autoimmune conditions and stuff had to do with inflammation from eating too much sugar.
Yeah.
I was a sugar addict. Like that was my difficult
That
place.
probably was your stress reliever, right? A lot of people.
Yeah, in some weird sort of way, in a self-sabotage kind of way. I really overdid it on and I used to love to bake and make meals for people and stuff like that. So food was a huge part of my life. So giving it up, I suppose there's probably like a level of grief that went along with that too, because I was kind of a big.
But you know what's interesting is, and you probably found this too, is we're habit forming creatures. Everything we do is habit. So it's that initial breaking that habit of the way you're eating. Once you form a new habit and your brain gets comfortable, it makes a deep groove, and you're like, now you're, and actually it's interesting because it's just like the pandemic. We were all habit, and all of a sudden we're like, what? We can't do this, we can't do that. Everyone goes into this almost like a shock. Now we've all gotten to a new habit.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And it's
know.
more easier than you think it's going to be. When you're on changing a habit, you think, oh, this mountain, I'll never get up it.
Yeah.
But it's way easier than you think it's going to be. And the rewards on the other side are just life-changing.
Yeah. I've learned to think of that when I'm trying to change something. I said, just need to make a new groove in my head. I used to think I was this way. I've created a really, really deep groove of gratitude in my brain. I'm obsessed with gratitude. Being grateful for the present moment and the simple things is super healing. Do you use that?
I love it. I need to use it more. And you inspire me in that way. Like did you have the other day that said you were grateful?
Which one?
Did you have a sweatshirt and it said something about gratitude on it?
Yeah. Yeah. Every day grateful. But it's empowering and it will change your life. I didn't think it would, but it's not just saying, oh, I'm grateful, or I'm a grateful person, or oh, I'm so happy for my home. And it's not that. It's deeper. It's a practice like meditation. So you get this groove that you start to wake up grateful. I now think about it all day long. I will be in the shower and I'm grateful for my hands for washing my hair, grateful for the water. I'll get out of the shower. I'm like grateful I can dry myself, grateful for my home. I'll have breakfast. I'm like, oh, I'm so grateful for this, grateful for the view. I mean, it doesn't end.
Nice.
Totally life changing.
Feeling it's not right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I love
so anyway, what else was I going to ask you? Oh yeah. What will you never take for granted again with this pandemic?
Woo, good question. Whoa, what will I never take for granted again? So many things are popping into my head. Of course, my art. Yeah, my children. Oh man, I'm probably gonna think of a really eloquent answer after we.
I always think of like freedom. to just be
Mm.
and not, free to hug if you want, free to travel,
Yeah. Yeah.
freedom to,
Yeah.
yeah,
Hugging is a good one. Oh my goodness. And I
I
loved your
know.
story about going to visit your mom and putting on your mask and getting the best hug ever. Yeah, I miss that. And I probably have a tiny bit of resentment to just the way this is all being handled and disconnecting. Like my grandfather said he was a man of very few words, but one of the things he said to me when I was little was a good handshake is, your strongest kind of like way to connect with people. So I think
Yeah.
about in his voices in my head and I'm like, we don't shake hands anymore.
No.
What?
People, and I really miss the whole, just the connection you have with a smile. Like, the masks, I know they have the purpose, but we need to wear them and respect that we need to wear them. But you don't see the smiles.
Yeah.
You don't get the same connection. I know it's crazy, crazy time. But anyway, I guess we should probably sign off because you and I could talk forever. But if people want to get in touch with you or see your art, we'll leave the website in the comments. It's Carrie Ann Arts, right?
.com. Yeah.
.com. And I'll put it in the comments so they can click on it. Carrie does have a virtual Christmas card workshop coming up on Saturday.
Yeah, I wanted to do it Saturday, but I'm thinking that maybe like I haven't had a lot of people sign up yet, so I'm kind of toying with the idea of maybe bumping it up a week.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so yeah, you can check in. I'm Carrie Ann Arts on Instagram, so I post there. I have a Facebook group called Inspiration, and it's like IN-Spiration.
Oh,
So
okay.
anybody's welcome to join that for a little bit of creative inspiration. And I post to my blog every Friday at carrieannarts.com. So you can find out sorry, I don't have a solid answer on my painting workshop date, but I think I might bump it up a week and do it the following weekend because I think
That's okay. We can put I think it's in the Carrie Ann Arts, your website, right? It'll be on there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Well, Carrie, thank you so much for joining me. I adore you.
I adore you back and your family. Your family
Yeah.
is like my family.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's been awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for watching. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon.
Oh, I love you.
Bye. Love you too.